Dogworks Radio is sponsored by Alaska Dogworks. Check out their website at alaskadogworks.com.
Hello and welcome, everybody. This is Robert Forto for the Dog Driver Show, and joining me today is my co-host, Koresh Parto. Koresh, how's it going?
I'm doing excellent today. Beautiful sunny day in Wasilla, Alaska today, and ready to talk to one very interesting guest today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. His name is Billy Allen. He is calling in from Scotland. Billy, how's it going?
I'm good, guys. Good to speak to you. It's 7 o'clock in Scotland here. Weather's been really warm. Good to go.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Can you do us a favor and just give us a real quick introduction about who you are and what you're all about, please?
Yeah, of course. Like I say, my name's Billy Allen. I live with my wife, kids and dogs in Kirkcaldy, Fife, Scotland. I'm 49 years old. I've been running dogs mostly recreationally for about 15 years. For the past 9 years or so, we've been running a dog supplies retail shop, and we were the first retail shop in the UK to specialise in sled dog sport equipment. And nowadays, we've pretty much stripped all that away. We got rid of the shop just a few months ago there, and we're doing everything online now. And we're just concentrating on our dog food company, which is the Scottish Dog Food Company. We plug there. And Run Dog, which is our dog sport equipment company.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for joining us. I know it's quite the distance over Skype here, but you sound good. KP, let's jump right into this. What do you have to ask Billy?
Well, first of all, Billy, I wanted to know how you started in the sled dog sport in general, and why you started with your first dog, basically, and how you started.
Okay. Good to speak to you, KP. I hope things are going all right for you out there.
Fantastic. We are doing excellent.
Great stuff. I probably should start with my first ever dog. When I was born, 1969, I'm 49 years old now. The dog that I was born with was a guy called Chinook, and he was half Alsatian, half Husky. And I was 2 years old, I think, he was 2 years old, I think, when I was born. So I had a good bond with Chinook, and I watched Call of the Wild and all that kind of thing. I think it's the first ever film I got a bit emotional about, and I suppose that's where it kind of started from, really. So then I've had dogs all the way through my life. I'm an ex-military guy, so I was away doing other stuff apart from what I really wanted to do most of my life, and that was work with dogs. And then I moved back to Scotland from England in 2003, and I got my first Siberian Husky, a guy called Bonzo. And me and Bonzo did a lot together. You know, it's always the same when you get your first dog like that. I got myself a dog scooter, my first kick bike, which would be 15 years ago now. And we just went everywhere together. I was in sales at the time, so I was up first thing in the morning, out with Bonzo for a blast on the scooter. I went everywhere in those days, just straight out the back gate, up through the housing estates, away through the back trails, back along the main road, all the things that we tell people not to do now. But so that's kind of how I got started. So I started off with Bonzo, then I got a few more Siberian Huskies through what they call Siberian Husky Welfare across here. I think they call it Rescue where you guys are. So I got Jazz, she was a female. I got her. I just seen a headshot of her, cute looking girl. Drove all the way down to the south of England for her, 9 hours. Got down there and she was just a little barrel of a dog. I took my daughter with me, so I didn't have any choice. I had to come back with her. So she was my second one, but she could only really run half the speed of Bonzo. So they weren't compatible really. So that was my first 2-dog team. Then I got a young lad called Diesel. Again, I got him from Rescue. He'd never been outside the back garden for in the first year of his life, and he was wired to the moon. He was completely wired, but yeah, got him working really nicely, and he was the faster of the 3 of them. But by this time, I think Bonzo was maybe about 5 years old or something like that, maybe 4 years old. So he wasn't quite as fast as Diesel. So at that point, I thought, well, I need to get another younger lad just to pair up with Diesel, and then I've got a kind of mishmash four dog team. Really naive in those days. Again, I went back to Siberian Husky welfare. I got a young dog. I think he was about a year old at the time, but it really didn't work out very well, that dog at all. We tried for about a year with him. He wouldn't run in the team. He had no interest in working at all. He bit me. He didn't like me, and in all fairness, I didn't really like. It was the first dog in my life that I don't think I really liked either. So it was a bit of an emotional kind of head-wrecking time, and in the end, I kind of looked at the situation. I thought, I'm keeping this dog for all the wrong reasons. Maybe I should just get back in touch with welfare and see if he could go to a better place home. Because at this time I was starting to think about hounds as well. So that would have been about 2009. I was starting to find out a little bit more about hounds. So I kind of got to the stage with this mishmash four-dog team. I thought, well, what do I do here? Do I carry on getting more of these types of dogs in and just end up with maybe 10 or 14 dogs in my kennel and maybe be able to put a four-dog team out of it? Or do I just spend my money properly and get into this properly? Or do I just get out of it altogether? So I just got with my wife at the time, and we talked it through, and we decided just to go for it. So I'd just come out of a bad relationship. I'd very little money left. The house sale had taken about 3 years to go through, so I left with I lost quite a bit of money in the house sale. So I spent the last of my money on a good woman and a good dog. And after about a year and a half of negotiations and waiting for the right time, I finally drove from Scotland out to Norway to Hege Ingebrigtsen's kennel. Well, sorry, I didn't go to Hege Ingebrigtsen's kennel. I went to Hamar, which is about an hour and a half or something outside Oslo. And that's where I was meeting Hege. And I was buying a girl from her, a bitch from her, that was bred to her other main leader. So these two leaders were off our world champion winning 6 and 8 dog team. So that's exactly what I was looking for at the time. So we brought Florence across, and she had 10 pups, which we weren't quite expecting 10 pups, but there you go. So just before, before I got Florence across, I started kind of worrying about things, because I had 3 Siberians, because I let Robbie go back to welfare. I had 3 Siberians at the time, and it suddenly dawned on me, if Florence had a lot of pups, I would only really have Florence to train those pups. And then just at that time, a very famous racer in Scotland, a guy called Stephen Lindsay, he was about 3 or 4 times world champion in dryland racing. He was getting out of the sport after about 18 years, I think, had been in it. And I heard through the grapevine he was getting out and he was selling up all the dogs. Hard time for him, obviously. So I got in touch, went down to see him, went out with his 8-dog team, and we decided between ourselves that I could take 4 of the dogs, 3 of his older leaders and a girl that had been really successful, and she was just retiring, basically. So we gave her a retirement home. So the 3 main leaders, I thought that'd be great, that plus Florence from Norway. That's going to give me 4 cracking leaders to train all the pups. So we went from, just in a few months' time, we went from 4 dogs up to 18 once we did the pups. And that was quite a bit of a change for us, obviously. And that was that. That was me. I'd got all my foundations for my kennel, and I was ready to go.
That's very interesting, Robert. It seems like almost all of us passionate people about sled dogs, we started always with 1 or 2 dogs, and before you know, we have more and more. Is that the same for you?
It is the same. And listening to Billy, I had a very similar experience, starting with just 1 or 2 dogs. And of course, they weren't the best, and they were, of course, from a rescue. And then you end up with really high quality dogs. And that sounds like where we're at right now in Billy's life with the sled dogs. But I have to ask real quick, Billy, while we are talking about sort of the lead up to this, are rescues and or welfare organizations pretty big over there in regard to sled dogs, or is it kind of a niche market?
I would say it was really big. There is welfare is good over here. They They go and check out all the homes. With Huskies, they check them out for, make sure they've got 6-foot fencing all the way around. You pay for the dog, obviously. I think they look for a donation of about £200. So it's not really that cheap, but, the intention, obviously, is to make sure the dog's going to the right place. Siberian Husky Welfare, they're the biggest kind of sled dog welfare association over here. There's nothing really for Eurohounds or Scandinavian hounds, but then I don't know of any Eurohounds or Scandinavian hounds that have kind of gone through the welfare route across here just now. We've had Eurohounds across here for maybe about 19, 20 years now, but it's never been a massive thing. I think Siberian Husky racing, purebred racing is still the bigger sport. Probably the same as across there. Most people that get into the sport, they start off with welfare Siberians, rescue Siberians, and then it depends where they go. They maybe get 1, 2 or 3 of this, they get really keen, and then, maybe they'll progress and get into other dogs, or maybe that'll just be their limit, and then they'll kind of drift away. I think with dryland sports, the way they are just now, monosports is a big, big thing. Teams are getting smaller across here. There's not the big kennels that they used to be. So I think welfare's still got a good place in the sport. Not my kind of thing anymore, obviously, but it's still a good thing that they're getting looked after.
Of course. Go ahead, KP.
Billy, you mentioned about dryland and scooters and the training in Scotland. As our listeners, they can imagine, Scotland is not recognized for their heavy amount of snow and extreme cold temperature. I'm assuming a lot of events are happening on dry land with scooters, carts, or canicross. Give me a little bit of the challenges that you have to go through with the temperatures, the type of the trails, the restrictions, animal control people, and some of the problems that you may have because of your environment.
Yeah, sure. When I got into it, I think, it was that kind of sort of old school mentality that about 12 degrees, that's what we call it across here, is the cutoff. You times that by humidity, and you didn't really, with the sled dogs back then, 12 degrees was the kind of limit. But nowadays, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's happening, and as far as I know, there's no real problems with it. There's some people that are training all the way through the summer up above 20 degrees, and there's races that are catering for that nowadays, like Canicross with the TDM race out in Europe. That's a big one, and that's right in the middle of summer, high temperatures. So people are training in warmer conditions. It's not my thing. I don't feel comfortable with it at all. My ideal kind of temperature, my cutoff temperature is maybe about 8 to 10 degrees, and that's pretty warm for me. I have this idea, if I put my coat on, then it's cool enough to train. But like I say, they're going out in warmer temperatures. So most of the training patterns across here are guys that are going out early morning before they're going to work. So they're getting up maybe 3, 4, 5 o'clock, getting the dogs or single dogs and the bike and the scooter or the rig, whatever they're going to do, getting them in the van and up to the training area. So there's quite a lot of dedication in there. The training area can be about an hour and a half away, and they're doing all this before the sun comes up so they can get on the forest areas before a lot of civilians and everything are going around there. Because that's the other kind of problem that's creeping in just now with the sport over here. It's not just Scotland. I think it's even more so in England. They've got slightly different rules down there with the Forestry Commission. You've got to use permits nowadays, so you've got to try and get a permit for the forestry that you're using. Sometimes that can take over a year, 2 years, and then of course you've got to have insurance and all that kind of thing for a lot of the training areas as well. And you've got to do this outside of the hours. So you guys, you've got it really good across there. You can go out any time of the day, daytime mushers across here most of the time, unless it's on a private trail, which is becoming more popular as well. Guys that are using the forests, and that forests are the only real areas where you can get a decent bit of mileage. Everybody that's training in the forests, they're up and getting in there before the sun rises, and again at night time, going in there after 7, 8 o'clock at night, really, all the way through to maybe midnight kind of thing. So at the start of the season, most people would be up and out early in the morning because that's when it's coolest. And then obviously once you're 2 or 3 months into the season, you can start going out at night time, like I say, 7, 8 o'clock. But it's pretty much all done in the dark, which is a shame. I've not got that kind of dedication anymore. I'm just a bit of a daytime musher. I'll go out daytime or I'll go out early evening. I'm not really into getting up in the morning at 7 o'clock and going doing that anymore. Okay.
Yeah, the fellow Alaskan mushers and dog drivers here, they don't know how fortunate we are to have our trails within minutes of our houses and the temperatures to be the way that they are. Personally, I live like literally 3 minutes from a dedicated dog track where you can go and park your vehicle and you run your dogs. I remember when we lived in Europe, we had restriction about motorized vehicle. God forbid if you had an ATV on a forestry trail, of course, as you can imagine, Billy. But I feel for you. I definitely feel for you. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you and chat with you, Billy, is in our sport, of course, we have a lot of racers, recreational people, and we also have passionate people about sled dog sport in general. And you've done a few very, very interesting things lately. One of them is to create this Facebook page that you have started about the hounds in general. Tell me a little bit the thought behind it and why and how you started this and what the page is doing right now.
Okay. I think it's a group called the Eurohounds Alaskan Huskies. In the UK at the time, I think it was probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I decided to start something like this up. It was mostly kind of purebred groups and groups that were run by a lot of purebred people, and there was a lot of squabbling about it, and I kind of felt there was a lot of tension between purebred owners and hound owners at the time, not only on Facebook and Facebook groups, but also in the sport itself. So I thought, well, okay, if we're not going to come together, then, just do our own thing, I suppose. So I started up the Eurohound group, and it was for like-minded people that had the same types of dogs as us, the same interests, purpose-bred hounds, from good breeding, and that wanted to find out more about it and wanted to understand the bloodlines and all that kind of thing better. I'm really pleased the way it's come on, because like I say, some of the groups in the past, there's been a lot of bickering and arguing and fighting and everything on there. And the Eurohound group, it seems to be a different mentality altogether. We've got good experienced people on there, giving great advice, and they're not getting any abuse or anything for it. So it's good. It's going in a really good direction, I think.
That is definitely interesting. I enjoy reading some of the comments and chats about that. Interestingly here, of course, we don't have any friction between the purebreds and the purebreds hounds and also the Eurohounds and Alaskan Huskies. We all quite honestly believe that a sled dog is a sled dog. It's kind of unfortunate that you have some of the situation in Scotland. You're doing another thing which is very, very fascinating. You are trying to develop new equipment and different type of equipment for the dogs in Scotland through a company called Run Dog that I follow personally. And tell me a little bit the thought behind that and the process behind that and why you started this company.
Yeah, sure. Just to cover that last bit there, when you were saying about different types of sled dog owners, I think a lot of that's in the past. It seemed like it was a bit of a transitional period. Nowadays, the sport in the UK, it's pretty good. It's a lot of people are all coming together a lot of the races are all combined races where all types of dogs are running. It's a good setup in the UK just now. There's a lot of enthusiasm. It's going in the right direction. But anyway, right back to Run Dog. It's called Run Dog, by the way. Dug is a Scottish word for dog. So it came about because we had a dog food company called Scoff Dog. And so it made sense if we're bringing out the sport and dog equipment to call it Run Dog. And so that's how Run Dog came about. Run Dog's actually been on the go about 4 or 5 years now, probably I think about 5 years. And just before Rundog, it was actually called Scabby Dugs. And that's where I was making just kind of recreational equipment. And then we had a retail shop at the time. And, you know, so it was mostly pet owners and, like I say, welfare huskies and that kind of thing coming in. And they wanted kind of shoulder type harnesses. And I would get asked all the questions, can you make a harness from a husky to stop it pulling and all that kind of thing. We've all heard those kind of ones. And after doing that for a while, a couple of years, I'll have to admit, it was quite a novelty getting up in the morning and driving into work and seeing people walking about the street and down the high street with my harnesses on their dogs. I kind of had a bit of a giggle at that. But after a little while, I just really wanted to get back to what I was interested in and just making really good equipment. It's the best equipment I could make. And it was just basically for our types of dogs as well. So I thought, you know, if I'm going to go anywhere with this, I'm not going to be a big company. I'm never going to be the next Non-Stop or anything like that. And I don't want to be. I just wanted to make really nice fitting harnesses for Eurohounds and sprint type dogs like that. So we stripped everything away and I just got down at the sewing machine. I got my head into it and I started to learn. It was a funny way of learning. A lot of people, they probably do the opposite. You know, it's the easiest thing in the world is to get some good harnesses and then get on Alibaba or something like that and get in touch with somebody out in China and then just copy all the sizes and away you go with your own print on. But, you know, I could have done that, obviously. I could have went different ways, but I felt I would never learn anything if I did that. I kind of felt that I had to go the hard way about it and just sit down at the machine and learn from my mistakes. So that's what I did. I had a good tutor on the machine. She taught me how to use the machine properly. Great guy that comes along and services our machines as well. And he's taught me an awful lot. But so I started off, I thought, well, I'm not going to copy anybody because I'm not going to learn anything like that. So I decided to look at designs and see if I could come up with something better, because that's the whole objective at the end of the day. So I would come up with a design, start sewing it, put it together, and there'd be something wrong with it, obviously. And then I did this for years. I just kept on making design after design. I tried everything. And I would, you know, I'd look at it would all be based around how the dog was running and how the dog's shape would change when it was running. So hounds, for example, as you know, they really get their shoulders into it, not just when they're starting off, but if you look at the hound's shape in the front of the hounds, it kind of almost rolls forward. And the front of the shoulders and the top of the shoulders, they're beyond the vertical point at sometimes. And so, you know, you've got to take an awful lot into consideration when you're designing a hound harness, I think, compared to just a standard kind of husky harness. There's a lot more movement in the hound harness. And that's the thing that's really difficult to get right. So I've done everything. I use tubular webbing. I put elastic inside the harness. I put elastic on inside the back straps of the harness, so the dog could push forward, but the harness would still have the same kind of structure. And then I realised, well, if you're going to elasticate the top, you've got to elasticate the bottom. So then I had this idea of bringing out the first full suspension harness, doing away with any need for suspension in the line. So that was a kind of novel idea. Maybe there's something in that in the future, I don't know. But again, if you put elastic and any kind of movement in a harness at all, as you know, any kind of movement in a harness is going to cause rub. Now, on a lot of the shorter distance races across here in Europe at the moment, the dryland races, most of them are just 5 to 8K. That's the majority of the running that's done in those kind of distances. And you probably wouldn't notice an awful lot of rub on the dogs, apart from the ones that are training hard all year round. You're going to get a bit of rub there. But I didn't want to just make harnesses for those distances. If I was, you know, I wanted to make the best I could. And by making the best I could, I didn't want to limit myself or take any shortcuts. So you know, the best harness is the best harness at the end of the day. It's going to work for it's going to work for all distances, hopefully, for the type of dog that you're trying to make it for. So to cut a long story short, I think I've pretty much tried every kind of idea that I could come up with over those last 3 or 4 years. And bizarrely, I've ended right back at the traditional X-back type harness, because I think that's why it's still on the go nowadays. And a lot of guys like yourself, KP, Robert, I don't know what you're running, maybe the same kind of harness. it ticks the majority of the boxes. And, you know, in terms of rub and it pulling up into the trachea and all these kind of things, if it's balanced out properly, it's a cracking, you know, it's a really good design, and it's very supportive. And if it's fitted properly and it's all balanced out properly, dogs will run really well in that, and it's comfortable for them as well. And obviously, cutting down on any kind of injuries or anything like that, a good fitting harness is going to be the best way to go. So I got everything else out, all the old designs and all the rest, and I thought, all right, I'm just going to have to go right from the start again here and work on getting the best X-Back harness I can. So that's what I did. And I looked at the people who I thought were making the best ones at the time. Deb Serbusic out of Windigo. She's got a lot of history there. I think Deb's been making harnesses for about 40 odd years. And Deb was a good friend. You know, she gave me a lot of advice and a lot of help, which is hard to get from other people that make harnesses. You know, you don't want to give all your secrets away, obviously, but so it's nice if you've got somebody kind of looking out for you a bit there. So yeah, Deb was a great help, and Asa from Drag Rattan, I've got a lot of respect for Asa and the Drag Rattan harnesses. When you start to make these kind of X-Back type harnesses and you start to really understand them, really understand the fit and the different kind of angles and stuff, it's all about the angles, it's all about the geometry. You know, when you first start making harnesses, you think it's just about the materials and the easy part. It's just measure the neck and then measure the length of it. But it's all to do with, you know, it's like what we call a push bike. I don't know what you call it across there, you know, a bike with pedals. You can go and buy one from the local store for a couple of £100 and it'll get you around the park all right. But there's a massive difference between that and something that's going to be costing you a few £1,000s. And it's really the same with harnesses, and that's where I am just now, I think. It's just kind of fine-tuning these angles to get the harness sitting how I want it to sit. And, you know, I think, like I say, the ones that I've learned most from are definitely Deb Serbusic and Asa. I think the Drag Rattan harness, probably one of the best X-Backs out there, to be honest. I'm still learning bits and bobs about that kind of design. So the way I want my X-Back harnesses, I don't want them pulling too long. What I mean by pulling too long, if the back straps are at too much of an angle to the rear, I think it pulls too much on the front, if that makes any sense. It's kind of like if you get an elastic band between your forefinger and your thumb and you pull the centre. That's how I see those harnesses pulling, and that's how I kind of envisage it on the dog as well. So my harnesses, my X-Back type ones that I'm doing just now, I want the chest, the back, the whole front end of the dog to be cradled by the front end of the harness. So the dog's not only, you know, all that balance is evenly distributed all the way through the dog. It's not pulling in one part or the other. The dog can put his whole front end into that harness, get his head down and really push hard, and it's going to distribute the balance all the way through, right through the spine, right to the rear legs. So that's what I'm aiming to do with my X-Back. I think I've got it pretty good just now. I'm really, really happy with it. I like the materials that I'm using. You know, the padding, for example, I see a lot of harnesses that don't even bother to put waterproof padding in. Some of them, I don't really get that. You know, in the UK, it's mostly muddy and wet trails. We call it dry land, but it's closer to wetland. Getting up in the morning and sticking those wet harnesses back on the dog, I wouldn't want to do it on myself. So I don't want to do it on the dogs either. So all the padding that we use inside our harnesses, it's all 100% neoprene, doesn't hold water at all. And so, you know, you can get the harness off the dogs, hang them back up, stick them back on, they're going to be bone dry again, and they're not losing any of their padding, which is a nice thing as well.
Billy, that's very interesting what you say. I know that you send me some pictures of some of your designs and ask me, you know, my ideas about some of the products that you are developing. It's always interesting to look at new stuff. I'm personally a equipment snob. I call myself. I like to have the best equipment for my dog team, because that's I believe is part of their success. Use not just the dog, it's good equipment, good nutrition, good training, and good bloodlines, and on and on and on. And if you want to do well, you have to have all of that. on your side. I 100% agree with you also about different harnesses, not having the ultimate harness. I personally, like I actually use different sets of harnesses for different pressure points on the dogs because of the rubs, because of the some of the pressure on their hips, shoulders, necks, and ultimately I change the sets every other training probably, and I believe that is extremely helpful. Tell me a little bit about the fact of your harnesses using a point of attach, which is a little bit higher. I asked you this question privately when you sent me some pictures, and I want the listeners to understand the thought behind it also.
Okay, and I think I know what you mean there, KP. The point of the attachment, again, when we first started out using three-wheeled rigs in the UK, the brush bow attachment for a harness, I think the regulations said, I think it was between about 20 and 22 inches or 18 to 22 inches off the ground, which is pretty much the same as a sled, I believe. We don't get enough snow across here to run sleds properly. So that's, anybody that was making a harness back then, they would have made a harness, hopefully, with the intention of the line going down to that point and it not changing the position on the harness too much. Obviously, if you're dragging the line down at the back end, you're going to put a load of weight on the hips, obviously. But obviously, if you've balanced that harness out on a dog or on a model of a dog, whatever you've done when you've been making it, there's a good chance that point of connection isn't going to be going. It's going to be going off at a horizontal height. It's not going to be going down to where a sled would be. So, in my head straight away there, when that's getting pulled down at the back, it's going to be pulling up into the trachea. So I think if you're going to be making harnesses for the majority of kind of hounds maybe that you're going to be making them for, you've got to look at the sport that they're going to be doing. So the bulk of the sport definitely in the UK and I think in Europe just now, and I believe it's a growing sport across where you guys are as well, is monosports and dryland sports. So with dryland rigs now, the old ones, like I say, the three-wheelers, they had a lower point of connection. But the new ones that are on the market now, the point of connection is coming off at the handlebar height. So there's going to be a massive difference in how that harness sits on a dog, whether it's coming off at a sled height or the handlebar height. And I think, in all honesty, I mean, like I was touching on earlier on, I'm paying an awful lot of attention at the moment to where the harness sits on the back of the neck and on the shoulder blades. This is a really interesting part for me just now. So take the neck, for example. If the neck sits too far back on the top of the shoulder blades, once there's tension on that harness, can you imagine the amount of pressure that's going down on the top of those shoulder blades? That's a hell of a lot of wastage energy in that, for the dog. So there's a lot more work just now is getting that neckline, the neck on the harness, positioned further forward at the top. And this is why I prefer a collared type harness. It's letting the dog get that front end, rolling its front end of its body, like I was talking about earlier on. And you're still going to get a good line coming from the chest all the way through the line, or gang line to its connection as well. So when I'm making a harness, what I try and do, I try and envisage, and I'll take photographs of it and I'll draw lines from where I want that force coming from in the dog all the way through the line to the connecting point on whether it's going to be a rig or a scooter, or if it's going to be the waistline of a canicross runner. And that also is going to limit the amount of movement that's going to be in the harness as well. And this is where, and I used to do shoulder type harnesses, and I know the majority of people run with shoulder type harnesses. It's a really good little test, if you like, to see how well that harness is going to be on the dog, is if you take the connection from your waist, if you're a canicross runner, for example, draw a line from your waist to where that connects on the back on the tug of the dog's harness, and then take a line from that tug down to the front of the chest of the dog. Now, with most X-back type harnesses, the line will be pretty much straight all the way down to the chest of the dog. With a shoulder type harness, the line goes to the middle of the back and then it veers off down to the chest. So the biggest flaw with every shoulder type harness that I've seen, and they're pretty much all like this is why I designed a 3/4 type harness a few years ago, so it was kind of limiting this. So what happens as soon as that dog pulls that line tight, that invisible line that's going from the attachment point in the harness down towards the chest tries to straighten itself out. Now, the only thing it can do there is pull that harness up into the trachea, because as soon as that dog puts tension on that line, it's going to try and straighten that line out. And so there's no real way you can get around that shoulder type harness flaw unless you lengthen it and turn it into a full-length X-back harness. Going back to what I was saying earlier, all roads go back to the X-back, and that's the only way you can really get around it. Does that answer you? Sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent there, KP. Did that answer your question?
That's exactly what I wanted, because the point of attachment of your harness are higher. So that's good. Robert, do you want to ask the last question like we do?
Yes, I do. Again, thank you very much, Billy, for the deep dive into the harnesses. I learned a lot just by listening, and I've been dog mushing for 20-some years and pretty much using the same type of harness all along with decent results. But before we go, Billy, I always ask our guests the same questions, and I'm interested to hear what you have to say, coming from not only equipment side, but also from a dog musher's side as well. And that is, if somebody were to be getting involved in the sport, they're brand new, and whether they're going to do monosports like you mentioned, where dry land, Iditarod, whatever, what is one piece of advice you would give to that new person?
That's a great question. I try to be positive. You know what it's like when you've been in the sport a little while, and I haven't been in the sport as long as you guys anyway. You kind of go through your different stages, don't you? When you first start out, for the first few years or so, you're really enthusiastic and you just want to get out there and help everybody get started. And you probably chuck too much advice at them to start with. And something that's the downside to Facebook nowadays. Everybody gives all kinds of advice, and sometimes it's better if you're just getting simple advice from one person. So going back to your question, best advice I can give is just have fun. They were the best days, just having fun, nothing too serious. And when you speak to a lot of the guys that have been doing it for years, they all kind of go back to that. You know, they liked just turning up at the race. It was more fun turning up in the races and sleeping in a tent than their fancy vans that they've got nowadays. And that's what it all comes back to, I think. It's just have fun. It doesn't matter if you're starting out with somebody else's harness and a length of rope and you don't have all the gear. It's just the connection between you and the dog. That's what it's all about. So it's just that'd be my main point. Just have fun, I think.
And, you know, Billy, that's great advice. I studied recreation in undergrad and grad school, and that's what it's all about. We go out to recreate first and foremost to have fun, and then, of course, there's all sorts of ancillary benefits going down the line, whether we're doing it as a job or working out our dogs or whatever. If we aren't having fun, I doubt the dogs are having fun, and it's usually all for naught as well. So on behalf of my co-host today, Koresh Parto, and our guest calling in from Scotland, Billy Allen, this is Robert Forto for the Dog Driver Show. We will see you guys next time. Goodbye.